Jeff Slauson here from 19 News Now at the 19 News digital desk. The people of East Palestine are still calling on state action, in particular on the decision from the governor to declare what happened in East Palestine an emergency. Now, why is that so important? Well, the deadline for that is July 3rd. If no emergency is declared between now and July 3rd, FEMA funding, so federal funding, will not be made available for recovery. I'll bring you now live. These are members of the These are members of the Unity Council for the East Palestine Derailment. All of these people gathered in Columbus, that's where this is taking place, looking to speak with Governor DeWine and different state lawmakers to try and encourage them to have that declaration done. So again, that emergency declaration will provide relief funds from the federal government to the people of East Palestine. This has been a long process for so many of them. They've been waiting for answers that haven't come. So there's music that's been playing this entire time. We're hoping that'll get taken down so then we can actually hear what these people have to say here. A couple of things I want to hit on. East Palestine's talking about how businesses are hurting.
Thank everybody for coming out today.
Here we go. Let's actually just take you live now to the speech again from community members of East Palestine in Columbus.
The Unity Council for the East Palestine Train Derailment have brought people to Columbus today so that we can have our voices heard. We represent East Palestine, Negley, New Waterford, Pennsylvania, and all the surrounding areas that were affected by the train derailment on February 3rd. We're also speaking for the community members that couldn't be here with us today. Unfortunately, life gets in the way, and some people that wanted to be here couldn't be here today. So, my name is Jamie Wallace. I'm from East Palestine. I live within the 1 mile zone. I have 47 immediate family members that live within that 1 mile zone. I was told when the evacuation was lifted on our town from Norfolk Southern and the EPA that it was safe to take my 3-year-old daughter back into my home. At that time, we had had no soil testing. We did not have the results of the water testing back. We did not even know what all chemicals were in our creek. We had air testing done on our houses, air testing that the EPA later admitted was done at insufficient levels. They were testing so high, they were testing for lethal limits, not safe limits. We have a right to clean air, to clean water, and to clean soil. Our children have a right to be in their homes and to not be sick. We are actively being poisoned as the railroad digs up the contaminated soil in our town. We have children with nosebleeds, ear bleeds. We're starting to see seizures in adults and in children. Skin rashes, all different types of ailments, and the EPA is telling us we can't find the pathway to exposure. There is a pathway to exposure, and it needs to be found. We have been left in the hands of Norfolk Southern. Norfolk Southern is playing God with human lives. We are left up to the whim and to the mood of the people who wait on us at the Norfolk Assistance Center. They may evacuate you, but not your neighbor. They might pay for your clothes, but not mine. They're deciding these things on a whim with no scientific knowledge, no scientific backing. These are human lives. They should not be left in the hand of the person who did this to us. We are victims, and we have to beg for any kind of help. The government has given us zero help. We have not even seen water bottles sent in from our own government. We are relying on other communities to take care of our immediate needs. It's easy enough to say just pick up and leave, but would you have the money to do that? To replace everything in your home? To pay a mortgage on a house in town and also on an apartment elsewhere? To buy all new clothes, toys, furniture, to replace your entire house? There are people that are stuck in these homes and they can't get out unless Governor DeWine makes a declaration and declares East Palestine a disaster. If Governor DeWine does not do that, we will continue to suffer. We have been suffering for 4.5 months already. Our kids have been breathing in these chemicals. They have these chemicals in their skin. Our environment has been destroyed. We're a community that depends on our wildlife to eat in the winter. We depend on the fish, the crops, the cattle. We can't depend on that anymore. And it's starting to feel like we can't depend on our own government to take care of us. Governor DeWine, we are demanding that you declare this an emergency, not tomorrow, not in 120 days with your extension that you applied for yesterday. We need help now. We are suffering and we need our government. We are United States citizens. It's time that you pay attention to us and get our families out of this toxic environment.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zuja Jenis. I live in East Palestine, Ohio. I'm here in Columbus today to demand immediate and necessary action from the state in response to ongoing chemical disaster and crime against humanity in my home of East Palestine, Ohio.
Closer, Mike. Use your voice, please.
At the hands of neglectful corporations and complacent government agencies, my family's lives have been unexpectedly uprooted and at no fault of our own, condemned to dangle in a hotel purgatory for over 4 grueling long months without answers about our future or even what tomorrow may hold. We need answers and we need safety. I am now homeless and my family has lost everything. We've lost all our belongings, everything's contaminated. Norfolk Southern says they're making it right, which is only adding insult to injury. We are not being taken care of in any substantial way. I don't know how I'll make it through this disaster on my own, emotionally or financially. None of us deserve this. We are repeatedly told it's safe, while we continually become sick every time we go home. The powerful, sweet, sickening, chlorine-like odor still invades my home and all of my family's belongings, yet no one can tell me what it is or what to even do about it. The CDC admits these chemicals can cause a plethora of permanent health issues, including cancer, but we can't even get proper testing in our homes or in our bodies. My son and I both have genetically compromised immune systems. Due to our close proximity and the unescapable thick, toxic smoke, we both got terribly sick the night of the derailment. I still experience exposure symptoms, per CDC, when I walk into my home. My child has developed an unexplained rash since the derailment, and none of his doctors will even pursue chemical exposure monitoring. After I successfully fought for a test, his little body did in fact show levels of vinyl chloride. Although his doctor couldn't elaborate on it whatsoever, nor did they even give us a referral for a toxicologist. I'm still waiting for the results of my test over 2 months later. My son is 9 years old and asthmatic. His well-being is everything to me, and I cannot morally bring him back into such hazardous conditions. Irreversible, serious long-term health impacts terrify me, especially as a mother. Despite continuing frightening symptoms and undeniable odors, we're told everything is fine. We've been left in the dark and abandoned. This is no humane way to live. Consequently, we'll be forced to leave our home and leave behind the once comfortable life that we had worked to build in East Palestine. At the end of the day, materials can be replaced, unlike family members. I'm not sure where we can move to that will be safe from history repeating itself or how we will even afford it on our own. This was not in my plans. I'm afraid the lack of appropriate response amongst our officials will paint my son's concept of an unjust society. Our leaders need to listen and stop catering to self-serving corporations. I'm deeply burdened by the sense that our country is not safe unless something significant changes systematically. We've lost not only our sense of safety, but our health and our rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Governor DeWine and/or President Biden need to declare an emergency immediately and get every American citizen out of the affected areas. We need permanent relocation, not chemically laden homes or cramped, expensive hotels. We need proper testing and long-term monitoring, not gaslighting. The EPA themselves admit their testing isn't sensitive enough, yet we see no new action. State and federal agencies are supposed to oversee this operation, but they're much better at turning the other cheek to appease Norfolk Southern. Governor DeWine and President Biden simply refuse to speak to much of our community, and we have zero long-term reassurance from anyone about anything. Everyone seems to want to sweep it under the rug, especially once the railroad begins selectively buying out people, businesses, and politicians. Maybe denial is to blame. Maybe it's simply classic bribery. Either way, Ohio has the responsibility to protect its people. Most of us have been entirely neglected and left to our own defenses. In one of the most powerful countries in the world, I shouldn't have to fear if my little boy will become sterile, or if I will live long enough to be able to one day meet my grandchildren. We are human guinea pigs. Yes, our economy needs to make profit and transport goods, but not at the cost of human lives, not at the cost of our children's future. Unless an emergency is declared to set a precedent and these atrocities are remediated properly, it will happen again. The current systems between the government, corporations, and humanity itself are far from sustainable, and that is becoming tragically more apparent in the poisoned, sold out, and nearly forgotten small American towns like East Palestine, Ohio. We need an emergency declaration, and we need it today. We need an escape from this nightmare. Our children deserve better. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Darren Gamble, and I'm also from East Palestine, Ohio, and it's a privilege to be able to speak in front of you people today. You know, on the way down here, the 3-hour trip from Palestine this morning, I had a lot of time to think about what I could possibly say in just a few short sentences that would make somebody try to see this catastrophe through my eyes. And I thought of hundreds of things I could have talked about, but I kept going back to one thing. And one thing that probably the vast majority of you people here are fortunate enough to have, and that's a home. I'll tell you about my home. I've lived in my home for 60 years. 6 generations of my family has held events at my home. My home, I have a beautiful buckeye tree that I've sat thousands of hours under with everyone from my great-grandfather to my own grandchildren. I worked 35 years as a union bricklayer to have my piece of the American pie. I still visit my home daily just to manicure the yard and look after things the way that I knew my grandfather would want done. Sorry. My home, it holds some of the most fabulous memories in my life until February 3rd, 2023. Now my home is a place where my wife of 40 years and my children and my grandchildren cannot even go for any significant amount of time because they come violently ill. And I'm sure that my home misses me just as much as I miss it. My home that is 3/8 of a mile from the train derailment, and as I stood on my front porch that fateful Friday evening and watched the raging inferno and the massive amounts of thick, black, toxic smoke rolling over the treetops, I just have to ask myself, is this the final chapter in my story of my home?
It's very emotional talking about this. My name is Ashley McCollum, and I'm about a block away from where the derailment occurred. On February 3rd was the last time I was able to comfortably be in my home. The day that we saw the fire and where the trauma started. To this day, my son cannot hear an alarm without reliving the situation. He's 6. Every day we're reminded when we wake up in a hotel, we don't have somewhere to go. Other families are experiencing the same things. We're financially chained to the situation that's put in front of us that we didn't do. It's not our fault. But we keep living it. Our kids keep living it. They're feeling it. They're breathing it. They can't get away. We can't get away. The worst thing I have ever heard in my life from my 6-year-old son on Mother's Day, "I'm sorry, Mom, I couldn't get you the house that you wanted for Mother's Day so we can have a home again." And that is the worst thing a mother could ever hear. And these kids are all experiencing this, seeing it, feeling it. Some of them are having traumatic issues, and we're reliving it because we're stuck. We need this help now. We need someone to do the right thing. DeWine needs to do the right thing. Biden needs to do the right thing. East Palestine needs help desperately. My story, and everyone else has a story. We are living in it every day until something is done.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alexis Vogt-Slater. I'm a member of the Unity Council for East Palestine Train Derailment and a board member leading the research subcommittee. It's a pleasure to speak before you all today. I'm from the Cleveland area, so not from East Palestine, from a small town called Madison. You may wonder why I'm standing here with a group of people from a town that isn't my own, one to which I have no historical connection. On February 14th of this year, I saw an interview on YouTube. I saw a woman, a mother just like me, who was in distress. She and her son had to flee their home in the middle of the night. Her son had awoken from a deep sleep and began vomiting, shaking, and pleading for water. The woman told the interviewer how her head ached, her eyes burned, and she too felt sick to her stomach. She told the interviewer about her sheer panic, her worries for her health, and her confusion about what could cause such a sudden, severe illness. My heart ached for her. I saw myself in her eyes. As a mother who lives within 1 mile of 3 very, very busy train tracks, I wondered, what if this happened in my town? What if we have to leave our home in the middle of the night because 1.1 million pounds of vinyl chloride and countless other chemicals were on fire near my home? And is my town next? As I said, I live near 3 sets of train tracks, not even a mile away. We're so close that trains moving at higher speeds shake my whole house. 25 million Americans are just like me, living within 1 mile of train tracks. Now, this statistic didn't bother me years ago at all. But now, as I've become friends with that woman, that panicked mother that I saw on YouTube, now I wonder again, is my town next? Will my home and my health and the health of my family be destroyed by another train derailment? And maybe you think that trains don't derail that often, and that wouldn't happen in my town. But did you realize that trains derail roughly 1,700 times per year in the United States? And statistically, Norfolk Southern derails a train every 3 days. And what's even more distressing is the large number of trains that carry hazardous materials, putting countless communities at risk. As I stated in my opening, I'm the leader of Unity Council's research committee. I worked as an analytical chemist for several years before attending medical school for a short time. So I knew the moment that I read that vinyl chloride was on fire in East Palestine, that the area was in grave danger, and that residents should immediately evacuate. And I thought that a massive cleanup would soon be underway in no time, but that didn't happen, not right away, and not a cleanup that was informed by science and logic. Unfortunately, the disaster response has left much to be desired. Instead of accepting the help from countless experts in the fields of water safety, air pollution, and environmental toxicology, the state and local governments have stubbornly forged a path that best suits Norfolk Southern. Although test results from several independent scientists have shown alarming levels of chemicals that are detrimental and even carcinogenic to humans, the U.S. EPA has declared the area safe to live, safe to breathe, and safe to play. I wonder, is the response by the EPA and the government of Ohio serving the citizens? Or is it protecting the reputation of a rail giant, Norfolk Southern? And again, I wonder, is my town next? Today, I stand before you to demand action, to demand that our governor, Mike DeWine, declare a state of emergency in East Palestine and the surrounding areas. In the face of such a catastrophe, we turn to the United States government, to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and the resources that they possess. FEMA's mission is to help citizens and first responders prepare for, protect against, and respond to disasters. Their expertise, coupled with the necessary funding and support, can make a monumental difference in the recovery for East Palestine and the surrounding areas. We cannot afford to wait any longer, to remain complacent in the face of this looming crisis. Lives are at stake, and the time for action is now. By declaring a state of emergency, Governor DeWine will send a powerful message, not only to this community, but to the nation as a whole. And it will say that the safety and well-being of our citizens is of paramount importance. This declaration will unlock vital resources for the community, expedite assistance, and provide the necessary framework for a swift and effective response that is so needed. We must not let corporate pressure stand in the way of protecting the lives of our citizens. Let us remind our governor that his duty is to serve the people of Ohio, to safeguard our lives, our homes, and our environment. We demand that he takes immediate action by declaring a state of emergency in East Palestine. It is our responsibility to stand united with our neighbors in their time of need, to protect our communities, and to demand action from our elected leaders. Together we can make a difference, starting here and starting now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys for holding up this sign. Thank you so much to everybody for being here today. My name is Jess Conrad, and I am a lifelong resident of East Palestine, Ohio. My parents, grandparents, they all graduated there. We're either alive or buried there. The street that I live on is named after my family, and the train was on fire when it went through my backyard. So I'm here to tell you today that this is not just an issue for East Palestine. This is an issue for every person, which is why I made this sign. Every person here is at risk. If you live near a train or near a stream, you are at risk. We are here today because a train that derailed in my hometown of East Palestine resulted in the voluntary release and burn of over 100,000 gallons of vinyl chloride. Over 99% of vinyl chloride is used to make plastics. The current rate of recycling plastics is only 5 or 6%. This means that 95% of all plastics are not getting recycled. These are your number 3 plastics. Your kids' toys. Is this worth another train derailment? I understand vinyl chloride also makes PVC pipes, unnecessary plastic packaging. In 1974, vinyl chloride was determined to be a known carcinogen, which there are no safe levels of carcinogens for humans. That means for almost 50 years, we have had opportunities to shift away from using this chemical. We are here today because there is a serious lack of political will to shift away from plastics, and we must now demand that Governor DeWine assign emergency declaration for East Palestine. Again, I ask, is this rubber duck worth another toxic train derailment? Vinyl chloride is mainly used for pipes, though, right? There are alternatives to every plastic use. You have stainless steel. Do the research. People say, oh, plastics are cheap. Well, you know what? It's roughly a 10% increase, and your primary cost for construction is labor. That's not enough to make a difference. What's the economic cost of a derailment or health risk issue to the exposure? Every single day, vinyl chloride is manufactured in low-income communities and communities of color in Louisiana, Texas, and Kentucky, where it threatens the health of the local residents. The U.S. regulatory system is inadequate. Restaurant owners say, we use plastic because it's cheap. It's not cheap. It's not cheap. Economically, the cost to those who live in or around the plastic manufacturing facilities is not cheap. Train derailments, not cheap. Spending millions of dollars in remediation. What are our demands today? The testing that is being completed by the EPA in East Palestine remains inefficient. We know this because people are still getting sick. It started with respiratory illnesses, nosebleeds, intestinal issues, not just for humans, but for animals. And now 4 months later, we have neurological symptoms, tremors, seizures. I understand that the EPA has no legal authority to deal with individual health concerns. I get it. Which is why Governor DeWine must assign an emergency declaration to allow President Biden to provide critical emergency resources to East Palestine to ensure public health safety for acute and long-term phases of remediation. We cannot wait for the ATSDR to give us a report in 5 years saying, oh, there's a health risk. We already know that. The CDC wants us just to sit around and wait until we can be treated for cancer. Are you kidding me? Is that what you want? Hey, you've been exposed to something? We can't treat you now, but let me know. Well, if that's the CDC's plan, then the CDC needs to hire a full-time physician, come to East Palestine, someone who's actually trained to identify these chemicals. There are children testing positive for vinyl chloride. This is my family and my home and my community, and these are the people that grew me as a child. Think about that. Think about your family, the people that grew you, your kids, your parents, your grandparents, all being impacted by this, and no one is listening. Labs are now refusing to complete the necessary medical monitoring. So even if we do find a physician that's willing to give us the prescription, nobody will complete it. Why? We all need blood work and urine tests. And you know what? They need to be repeated as often as necessary. And I don't want to have to pay for it because I did not derail a train and I did not spill vinyl chloride all over my soil 2 miles from my home. What else? We know there's a new municipal water filtration system being installed in East Palestine, and that's great news, right? Why would that same funding not be available for those of us with a private well? There are many, many, many of us within the 44413 area code, which is East Palestine, but also in Darlington, Enon Valley, Negley, New Waterford. We've all been impacted. Why would those people that are funding that filtration system not offer the same funding for those of us with private wells, which are in a minimum distance from the plume radius, right? That just came out if you haven't seen that. We know the spread of the chemicals went at least 7 or 8 miles down Leslie Run and Sulphur Run creeks and then to the Ohio River. I decided I wanted to buy my own filtration system. I have a private well, and I had to spend $5,000 to do that. When I went to Norfolk Southern to ask for reimbursement, they refused to reimburse me. These are the issues that we are dealing with. We know the Clean Water Act requires permits for discharge of pollutants. The US EPA and the Ohio EPA are responsible for those. The EPA, to my knowledge, has yet to release any permits for the stormwater pollution prevention plan under the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. These permits should be readily available upon request or even posted online. And again, to my knowledge, these permits have yet to be supplied. I will end with this. If you live near a train track, or water, this could happen to you.
Hi everyone, my name is Hillary Flint and I am a resident of Enon Valley, Pennsylvania. I'm also the Vice President of the Unity Council. I'm in Columbus today to urge Governor Mike DeWine to declare what happened in East Palestine an emergency. As a cancer survivor, I worry every single day that this is what's going to take me out of remission. If the soil was safe, Chase Kinder wouldn't have lost a third of his sheep. Linda Murphy's horse Apache wouldn't have fallen ill. Taylor Holzer wouldn't have had to create a GoFundMe to save what was left of his foxes. If the water was safe, 32,000 minnows wouldn't have been killed. 5,500 amphibians, crayfish, and other aquatic life would still be with us. The water at Leslie Run Creek wouldn't have a sheen that's similar to a rainbow. If the air was safe, Amanda Kemmer wouldn't be having seizures. Lori Harmon wouldn't have chemical burns, and children would not be testing positive for vinyl chloride. If Norfolk Southern really wanted to make it right, they wouldn't let Shelby Walker live in her home that's at ground zero. They wouldn't be hosting events in contaminated zones, and they certainly wouldn't be paying professional athletes to make appearances. If Ohio and Pennsylvania state government really wanted to make it right, they wouldn't have let us go home. They wouldn't have allowed Norfolk Southern to make decisions that affect the health and safety of their constituents. They wouldn't be handing out business loans while residents suffer. If the federal government really wanted to make it right, Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg would have been in East Palestine sooner. Vice President Kamala Harris would have had to come and speak with residents, and President Joe Biden would have showed up to see the tragedy for himself. If there was no crisis, we wouldn't be here right now. Jamie Wallace would be at home with her daughter Kyla. My grandmother Louise Severa would be in her armchair watching television, and I would be at work. If there was no crisis, the people of Ohio and Pennsylvania would not be before you today. We stand with those that came before us, Love Canal, Times Beach, Valley of the Drums. The question isn't if East Palestine will be a Superfund, it is when. How long will we have to suffer before our government does the right thing? Will they wait until babies are born with birth defects? Will they wait until children have leukemia? Will they wait until adults have hepatic angiosarcoma, which is caused by vinyl chloride? Ohio Governor Mike DeWine continues to file for extensions instead of making a designation that will help the residents of Ohio and eventually Pennsylvania. I'm here to tell him, once the time has passed and the people are sick, there is no way to file for an extension to save our lives. Thank you.
Hello. Good afternoon. It might be evening, but my name is Daniel Winston. I am the co-executive director of River Valley Organizing, and I am not impacted as everyone else, but I live about 30 minutes away. Why I'm here today is because we believe at River Valley Organizing that everyone deserves to live the life that they were promised, right? And since the derailment on February 3rd, RVO has been on the ground and helping with the community to make sure that we let our politicians know, we let big business know, and we let the media and everyone know that there must be mitigation to make sure that the village of East Palestine and the surrounding areas are taken care of like they were promised. And so why we're here today is because we wanted to make sure we partner with the Unity Council to make sure we brought people to the State House, because we believe since they weren't coming to us, that we were going to come to them. Since Governor DeWine, when he came to East Palestine, he wanted to talk to businesses. He did not want to talk the people that are here on the stage and the people that have talked. We were going to come to him. And if these people had to be uncomfortable in their houses and in hotels, then we did not care to make the people at the State House uncomfortable. I heard something today that as we were in the State House chanting and as they were doing some disrupting of session, Speaker Cupp of the House said it was a very bad thing that people came and they had the nerve to disrupt. And what I would say to Speaker Cupp is I heard that he stated that he came to East Palestine, but he came in secret with a delegation. So what I would say is this, Speaker Cupp, if you did not want the people to come to you, you should have came to us, and actually came to us and was visible. So what we are going to be doing, because I won't be with you long, is this. We are still going to keep coming back to the state capitol. We are still going to be bringing people back to the governor's office. And I dare say no matter where they're at, we are going to make sure the people of East Palestine and the surrounding impacted area will have their voice. Here at River Valley Organizing, we believe that the people have the power. And for so long, the people have thought the power comes from that building in the state capitol and the U.S. Capitol. But we are changing that, and the people behind me, And the people who have spoken today, we truly understand that we have the power. And so you have heard the stories of impacted people. And while we have the media here, I will say this. It is your job to make sure that these people are continuously heard. It is your job to make sure that their stories are not diluted and they are not lost, because people are still sick, people are still hurt, and people are being financially crippled. So I thank you guys for coming out today, but I ask you to make your way back to East Palestine, back to Darlington, back to Rogers, back to where we're at, to make sure that you're hearing the people on the ground. So today, I thank you for coming, and I hope that you give each of us your card. Jamie is back there. She's the president of the Unity Council. Hillary is over here. She is the vice president of the Unity Council. My name is Daniel Winston. I am the co-executive director of River Valley Organizing, and I'm hoping that you continue to speak with us after today. So thank you for coming. I want to thank everyone here for doing your job and holding these things and then going to the State House and doing what we're doing, because we drove 3 hours. And that's a shame that impacted people had to drive 3 hours to get people who are paid to represent us to actually listen to us. So we ask you today to make sure this message is heard. Thank you very much. You have a wonderful day.
So that wraps up the speeches in Columbus from East Palestine community members calling for Governor DeWine to step in, call for the emergency. If he does not do that by July 3rd, they cannot do it. So the federal funds cannot get to East Palestine. Our Michelle Nix will have this for us, much more tonight on 19 News at 10 and 11. But of course, our news is continuing over on CBS until 6:30. For now, I'm Jeff Slauson with 19 News. Have a great night. Much more to come, both on air and online.
19 News, now streaming on Samsung Smart TV. Search for channel 1035.